issues in perspective. And I think this is where we really need to celebrate what has happened, you know.
Okay, thank you very much. Let's also go to Philip Kachukwu in Lagos. We earlier introduced him as a national leader, the Change We Believe movement. Philip Kachukwu, you've listened to the other four guests. What are your opening thoughts, if you like, on the peace accord? We had it in 2015. What impact did it make? Now we're having another one in 2019. What are the likely dividends?
Thank you very much. It is a welcome development. And I don't think there's one Nigeria that have said anything negative about that peace accord. And we know what happened in election we had in the past, the violence because of statements made by presidential or governorship candidates. And this accord is an interesting aspect of Nigerian life and politics. I must appreciate the people that brought or initiated this idea to Nigerian politics. And why I said so is that that's 2015 election. I could remember I wanted to travel abroad with my family, and we scheduled a date that we'll go after the election. But when the election was reversed, that it was postponed, so we brought our traveling day to February. I have never seen such crowd in Nigerian airports like that. A lot of people wanted to run away from Nigeria because they felt there would be war, there would be anarchy. People didn't trust the process or the result that would come. But thank God, President Jonathan became what we call a hero by agreeing to that pact that they signed after losing the election. So it's a welcome development. And Nigerians must thank all the people that contributed to that peace accord.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Kachukwu. Now, let's come back to you, Dr. Yunusa. Now, we know that elections, no doubt, can spur good governance when properly managed. And also, before and during elections, if we don't manage the electoral processes, it can spur violence. Now, for the presidential candidates, those who signed this peace accord, how binding is it? How should they conduct themselves before, during, and after?
I'm going to use this opportunity to give a consultancy service to all of my colleagues. Nigerians are tired of listening to name-calling. Nigerians are tired to blackmail. Nigerians are tired of issue of violence because it doesn't bring food to their table. And they are very much aware of how politicians change from one political party to another just in search of getting power. And when they get the power, they neglect them totally. And so they result to more or less like trying to get their own share of the cake even before you get into the office. So what they want is to hear somebody who is interested in advancing their own survival. How do you give solutions, concrete solutions to the problem of power? How do you bring concrete solution to the issue of health? How do you bring concrete solution to the level of insurgency and protecting the sovereignty of the Federal Republic of Nigeria? How do you provide employment for this almost 65% of the total unemployed youth? How do you give new ideas to how we can advance the course of our educational system? Now, these are the areas that Nigerians are interested in. So they want to hear somebody who has those particular. So when you resort to the issue of trying to masculate and propagate violence and all of them, it will not work. It will be to your own loss because you may end up losing election because you are not able to speak to the issues. So with this particular peace accord, it kind of trying to change the narrative from you resulting to, I want to be in power by all means, to like not giving us solutions to the problem that is already there. So as far as we are concerned, a lot of us who need to be given room for hearing so that we can provide fresh ideas. It may not necessarily mean that probably there's only one position. Is the office of the president is only one. The office of the governor is only one. The House of Rep is only one. So even all of us are challenging for that particular position. At least give us room so that people can listen to our fresh ideas. At the end of it, or the person that may end up winning the elections may take from some of these particular ideas that we put on the table. Because if there are no people talking and giving ideas on how they think they can make solutions to certain problems, you are blocking those particular ideas. In the end of it, or what you have is a kind of a small myopic thinking that you may have bring into. So for me, generally, all of our colleagues should start thinking about providing concrete solutions to our collective problems so that Nigerians can be better and Nigerians can feel a fresh leaf that, yes, we are concerned about them. And always I want to use this Ali Mazuri's words, and I get so much disturbed about it. He was saying that while developed countries are trying to find their ways to the moon to advance the cause of humanity, we in Africa, particularly now in my own domicile area in Nigeria, we are trying to find our ways to our villages.
All right, Dr. Yunusa Tanko, thank you very much. Just before we bring it again, Dr. Ochogu, Mike Usaha, my colleague Ruth asked the question about the bindingness of an accord of this nature. I would like you to respond to that against the background of a moral perspective that an accord also represents, plus the issue you raised as Nigeria's foray in the foreign arena, namely our foreign policy objectives, which have been enhanced by our interventions, in troubled African nations, whether it's in Burkina Faso or whether it was in the Gambia, and so on and so forth. So what does an accord of this nature provide in terms of either a moral foundation or the legal bindingness?
Let me say one more time that I'm not quite sure we have celebrated the event of last week enough.
Actually, it was Tuesday.
Tuesday,
this week, yes.
Yeah, and I say this precisely because, Kingsley, these things have to happen for us to get to where we desire to be. I don't know about you, but in my language, thief, I don't know what opposition is other than enemy. I don't know whether you get the point I'm making. So an opposition party...
It's like going to court. Once you go to court, you are deemed to be an enemy.
Precisely. So we perceive persons who are contesting for the same position as us as enemies. This is just it. In Igbo, the same. I mean, the meaning of opposition is not there. Now, what am I saying? You then require practical measures like what we have in place to push us gradually to where we desire to be. It may not be legally binding. It's not something you can take to court and canvass a very strong position and all of that. But it has a very strong moral bindingness. I don't know whether you noticed the way in which those who were not at the original signing ceremony have, I put a call across to the director of Kuka Center yesterday, and he was telling me how some of the presidential candidates that came later to sign were apologetic, were full of apologies that I'm sorry I couldn't make it. It was because of logistics here and there and all of that. It tells you the significance of this process and how the political actors actually consider it. So it may not have the force of law, but you and I know, Kingsley, that we have entered into international commitments that are not legally binding per se, but they place a moral burden on us. And I think the peace accord also places a very strong moral burden on the political actors of today. And Dr. Chogu made a point that I really want to reiterate. We now have a national framework, if you like. It is important for us to now look at the flashpoints around the country and to say that, is there a way in which we can replicate this situation in the various states, for instance? It is not an assignment that I'm going to place on the shoulders of the National Peace Committee. We have elder statesmen, we have highly respected people in virtually all the states of the country. can these people, you know, utilize this framework that has been provided by the National Peace Committee and say that in states like Akwa Ibom, in states like that are potentially volatile, can we go into an accord with the principal candidates of the various parties, you know? So it's important. I mean, we now have a national framework that should guide what should happen at our local levels and really drill down, like Dr. Ochogu said.
Okay, thank you very much, Mike. Dr. Ochogu, let's have your own take on this, you know, with regard to the moral burden, if you like, that is placed on the signatories to the peace accord, and indeed to all those whom they represent in terms of membership of their parties and the generality of Nigerians.
Thank you very much. I think what I'll do is basically to link up what Barrister Oshafa said and what Dr. Tanko have really said in terms of the moral situation on a peace accord, and then the fact that those who are signatory to this peace accord have committed themselves to follow the various aspects of the peace accord. And one of it is what Tanko said in terms of issue-based campaigning. And what that has done basically is that it has provided space for the contestation and the competition of ideas in election. And like I think Dr. Tanko said, prior to elections, when different parties are competing, because it's a space for competition of ideas. For example, Nigeria is facing security challenges. We expect that all the 91 political parties should be coming up with their different ideas on how to engage and then provide opportunities for Nigerian citizens to say, okay, perhaps these and these are various options, you know, that political parties are providing for us. And within those contexts, they now choose which of these ideas is better for them. And like Tanko rightly said, if one of the parties happen to win the election, it does not foreclose, you know, the chances that they can borrow from the other ideas, you know, that is in the space. So election actually is a space for competition of ideas through various manifestos. But I think I don't see that really happening in terms of the quality of competition. And that is why I will throw the challenge to all the different political parties that this is the time for them to engage different researchers in different aspects of the problems that we are facing to provide them cutting-edge solutions, you know, to the problem that we are facing. Because the truth is that, unlike Lord Bishop Kuka rightly said, democracy has hardly, since 1999 till now, provided good food on the table of most Nigerians. And I think that this is high time for us to begin to get these quality ideas from those that really matters and then get them into manifesto, get them into policy, and get them into implementation so that people can benefit from democracy.
All right, Dr. Ochogu, thank you very much. Just to indicate that we have a torrent of tweets that have come in from our viewers. But before we take those tweets, there's an issue that, of course, Nigerians will be interested to learn more about. Mike Usaha was speaking to that briefly. And I would like Bishop Kuka at our Sokoto Network Center to respond to this. Now, not all of the presidential candidates were present at the signing of the peace accord on Tuesday. In particular, if you like, the leading opposition candidate, that's Atiku Abubakar. What happened subsequently to the official signing ceremony on Tuesday? How many more candidates have you had? Have you had others who've been signing onto the peace accord?
Well, again, as I said, almost immediately this happened. As we were trooping out, a gentleman accosted, two gentlemen actually accosted me, and they said, look, one of them said, this is the chairman of the presidential candidate of our party. Unfortunately, his flight was delayed. What are we going to do? And I said, well, everybody is trooping out of the hall now. We'll get back to you. I think what I'm very excited by is the fact that, like Mike Usaha said, and the Secretariat can testify, is that everybody who has come, nobody has come with any sign of bitterness. We have evidence, you know, that all the letters were delivered. But I think on a technical level, what may have happened is that there are now, every party has two offices, perhaps its headquarters and the campaign office of the presidential candidates. There may not have been enough synergy between them. But I also concede that on our part, we are running against the clock. So, but I think it's already been very well established that there's total absence of malice. So we are still, like I said, our doors are open and people are coming back, to make sure that they append their signature, and nobody will ever come late for this initiative. But let me make a very quick point in response to what has been said about what really happened. Is it binding? What is the way forward? Let me use a metaphor. I think that what happened that day is like somebody getting married and people coming, whether it's in the mosque or in the church, and well-wishers all gather, to watch you exchange your vows. In the final analysis, it is both of you who invite the priest and invite all your friends and family who come to witness what the promises you're making to one another. Naturally, I mean, if you got married and a day after, your best man and other friends come to your house early in the morning to say, we've come to see how well you are doing. They come on Monday, they come on Tuesday, they come on Wednesday. Oh, we've come to see how well you are doing. You tell them, please back off and now have a life to live. So what we did, we are witnesses. In the final analysis, as I said, we'll continue to encourage those who have made this commitment. But let me make one point. What we call hate speeches are the things that are verbalized. But what is even more insidious and invidious for us in Nigeria is the unspoken hatred that is between us as citizens. When an elected official decides, and I'm happy that Mike and others are complaining about what the opposition is and being enemies and so on. When a political party decides that it is not going to do business with those who didn't vote for them, when a politician decides that you won't get a school, you won't get a hospital, you're not going to get a road, you won't get a position simply because you didn't vote for me, they are actually verbalizing what was in their heart, and they only sought political office to express that hatred. So when we talk about hate speeches, it is better, actually it's better for you to abuse me on the street, and I know I can deal with that, than for you to have the hatred in your heart and not articulate it. So really, there are very difficult coping mechanisms for ordinary citizens. And I am pained when I see pregnant women who stood in the rain or in the sunshine to cast their vote, vulnerable people, people with disabilities who went to cast their vote, and then while others were drinking champagne in New York and Paris, either because they had the time to flee this country and never cast a vote, the same people have come back. They are in government houses, they are in the presidential villas, collecting contracts and making a lot of money. And when things turn sour, they will be the first to flee. So really, I cannot overstate the fact that we didn't vote politicians because we want roads to be constructed. If that was the case, we didn't need a democracy. The essence of democracy is to expand the frontiers of human freedom and human development, and to create the conditions for integration. All of us, including the armed robbers, everybody wants to live in peace. We can't overstate that. But the Nigerian political class is making it increasingly difficult by their disposition, by their lack of care and concern for ordinary citizens and our welfare. Suddenly, almost every governor you call now will pick your phone because elections are coming. It ought not to be so. So I think that the best we can do for this structure is we are running against the clock in Nigeria. The rest of the communities are impatient with us. And the third point, and please indulge me, I want to thank the members of the Peace Committee. Our chairman, you would need to know what General Abdul Salam has put himself through in the last 2 or 3 weeks to bring this thing to happen. All the members are extremely busy people. Imagine an Aliko Dangote taking time off for whom every minute is millions and so on, to take all this trouble. And please, we've decided not to be funded by the federal government. When we went to see the president, after his inauguration, the president offered us an office and told the secretary to government then to open an office for us. But on second thought, we decided that if we allow the government to fund the Peace Committee, it will lose its credibility and neutrality. So we are actually grateful, and I want to say here, we would not be where we are today without the support of the European Union and the Swiss government. Those are the institutions that have made this happen. So I want to call on some of our big men and women who are in the corporate world to come forward, because this story is becoming bigger for us. When I was asked to convene the Peace Committee, I just got decent human beings around, and I thought we will finish with this initiative of 2015, have the elections, and everybody will go home. When we finish and we assemble, I asked General Abdul Salam, what are we going to do now? He said, well, we don't know, but so I suggested let's sound out ordinary Nigerians. We brought the media in, leaders of the different political parties. We went to the Senate, we went to the House of Representatives, we went to President Jonathan, we went to the President himself. Each and every one of them said, no, 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 you cannot go home. So there's a lot of work for us to do to now structure the peace committee, since it has come to stay. But that is work for another day. But I really want, to answer your question, to thank all the leaders of the different political parties who turned out in such huge numbers, and to apologize for those who, through miscommunication, were not able to make it, but also appreciate those who have taken the trouble. Our office is open, and we hope that everybody and every candidate with their chairman will append their signature to this document.
Okay, Bishop Kukah, thank you very much. Let's now take the tweets that have come in from our viewers. As I said, there are quite a lot, and we'll patiently go through them. Festus Akimboye, one of our regulars. The peace accord played a role in the credible election and peaceful transition we had in 2015. I pray that ahead of 2019, the peace accord will also contribute to building political tolerance amongst the parties and the contesting candidates so that the election can take place in a peaceful and stable environment.
And from Dele Jackson Solomon, he said, the peace accord came timely. This concerted effort should be sustained by all parties involved to help prevent violence during the forthcoming 2019 general elections. It is very crucial to the peaceful transfer of power. Nigeria remaining a single indivisible entity is a must.
Now, El Farouk Ahmad tweets, now for the peace accord, I think politicians should take example from the 2015 general elections. At the time, the candidates were from different zones and regions, but they decided to make the 2015 election free, fair, and credible. I believe 2019 is going to be better than 2015.
I'll say amen to that. And from Law Alpha, the peace accord may not go far in restraining Nigerian brand of politicians from exuding desperation when the chips are down for the peace accord to make meaningful impact on the elections. There has to be a synergy among the electorates, security agencies, and INEC.
Chris Simeon. Now, this peace accord should extend to security operatives and political gladiators who are fond of intimidating voters at the polls. They should leave the masses alone and allow them to cast their votes freely and peacefully for credible elections.
And from Ibrahim Modu Aji, he said the setback of the 2019 election peace accord is the missing link of the warmly hug and pleasantries that we have seen between the two major contestants in the 2015 peace accord. The afterthought of signing of the peace accords by the major contestant has created a little gap of bitterness. And
Sandy Michael Amakoje has this tweet. Now, what is more important is for all aspirants to keep to the terms of the agreement to maintain peace during and after the election. Anything short of peace and agreement signed is contradictory and condemnable.
And from Chris Simeon, I'm very glad to see PMB signing peace accord pacts. Any candidate or political party members that try to cause chaos during or after elections will have himself or herself to blame.
It says Suleiman Babagana, it says the terms of the accord should be strictly adhered to by the personalities involved. The accord is a welcome development. Now, if it is drafted drafted as a standing order at the political party level, they would adhere to it.
And Suleiman Babagana, the composition of the accord should
I just read that. Let's
okay,
go to the
sorry.
Next one. Yes.
Abima Likita. It's a mere document since it is not enforceable against the signatories. It's a political document without any legal backing or force of law. Well,
our guests have already responded to that. Four of them, Bishop Kukah, Mike Usaha, Dr. Ochogu, they responded to whether or not it's legally binding, but the moral force that is here today and the signaling that it sends to supporters. Mutana Farouk tweets, agreement is honored by men of honor. A man who cannot keep to his words is not to be admired. It is on this note I concur that the peace accord should be acquiesced to by those who signed it. Nigerians are honorable people who keep their words. God bless Nigeria.
Amen. And Raji Afiz Abidemi Honestly, peace accord is a welcome development that was introduced to politics in Nigeria. It would make elections free and fair because all parties believe in peace in as much as you sign the peace accord. God bless Nigeria.
Suleiman Babagana again says the accord should be replicated at the grassroots level as it is more vulnerable to violence than the center of government.
And the last one I have here is Suleiman Sanusi. We expect same wisdom as that of Reverend Father Hassan Matthew Kuka from other clerics as well, but not that they should all connive to the partisans. Thank you, Father Kuka, for your fatherly advice.
Okay, thanks a lot. Those are the tweets that we can take in the meantime. Dr. Ochogo was actually driving towards that direction. But, you know, he had to make a detour to focus on the answer. But let's return to it. And I want to ask Dr. Tanko himself to respond to this aspect, which is just deriving from one of the tweets that we just said that, look, replicate this at the grassroots level. And therefore, you have seen this take place now at the upper echelons of government and the contestants for the election, the presidential candidates and the party chairmen. What is the potential for cascading this down to the lower levels where, as we all clearly recognize, is the potential for, again, more trouble likely to occur?
Well, it's a good suggestion. And the problem that we may face with that may be from the state level. Sometimes it takes probably an outsider to be able to actually identify those who can midwife it from the state. If you hand it over to the state government, majority of the people that they may select to handle those particular peace initiative may be people that they feel that they are more closer to them. So in that respect, I would rather suggest that probably the headquarters, the secretariat of the Peace Committee, maybe this would be another added work to our Lord Bishop Martin Skuka, to start tinkering with the possibility of really selecting some people from each of the states to be an appendix to the headquarters so that they will be more responsible to the headquarters and they will show some kind of strength. But if you allow it to the state, it may not have that kind of a bite that the National Peace Committee have. So if the Secretariat and then the members of the committee could make suggestions as regard to some people from the state, maybe 5, not more than 5 or 6, then we can select them from each of the states so that they could start working together. Because really, most of the problem, especially areas in Rivers State, for example, I remember with nostalgia that the Peace Committee during that time have to start thinking about how to even go to Rivers State. It was a very difficult position, and they have to think about even how to fly down to River at that particular time. It was so difficult for them. So Rivers State is a flashpoint, and then some other states too are flashpoints that we can really have to think of people who can come from outside to really look at how they can coordinate this as the case may be.
Now, Kingsley, just before we get to Mr. Kachiko in Lagos, I want Mr. Mike to answer this question quickly. Now, if we're looking at the peace accord in general, now it goes beyond that because during the elections itself, there are violence being incited. We see snatching of ballot boxes and all of that. I want you to talk on the role of security agencies at that level, because those who have signed the peace accord will not be on the field to even say, okay, let's be at peace. But what role can security agencies play from that?
I think one of the very clear messages that the National Peace, the Peace Accord has sent out to Nigerians is, look, it's no longer going to be business as usual. And it's a message that has been sent to politicians, but it has been sent to virtually all the actors in the political process. And this will include the security agencies also. And happily enough, a few weeks back, Mr. President came up on national television and made a very clear commitment. Indeed, it was reiterated yesterday. You have to be neutral. You know, he was at an event where he was represented by the Secretary of the Government of the Federation, and the message was very clear. Remain neutral, be as professional as you can in the conduct and in the discharge of your responsibilities. The Sultan later on took it up and amplified it and said, well, Mr. President has made a commitment. So the ball is now in your court. be as neutral and as professional as you can in the discharge of your responsibilities. So we have that on the ground. And my appeal then to our security agencies or the managers of our security architecture would be to say, here is an opportunity for you to contribute to moving this nation in the direction in which we all desire. It's not all about, doing the bidding of those you think are your masters. It is about the national interest, really, And I need to also add that, the peace accord cannot be activated on its own. And like Dr. Tanko said, every state in Nigeria has people who are respected to some extent. They are non-partisan, and the message that the peace accord is sending out is you don't really need to be partisan to be part of the political process. I think members of the National Peace Committee, most of them or all of them, are apolitical. And we have people like that in the various states. So this is the opportunity for them to get up, take the opportunity and say, well, we're trying to replicate what has happened at the national level in our various states. You don't need any government intervention. You need government buy-in. You need government cooperation. You need government support. But it's not an initiative that I think government is in a position to drive. It should be a citizen-based initiative, and it clearly says you don't need to be partisan to be part of this political process.
All right. Thank you very much, Michael Sahab. Dr. Chukwu, let's return to you, still on the point that has to do with how to cascade the essence, the spirit and letter of the peace accord to the sub-national level. Yes, of course, the National Peace Committee is national, is busy at the national level, but we do know there are some potential flashpoints. Rivers is there. Akwa Ibom is just entering now. Perhaps Kaduna also might be on the cards, and we're not sure one of, yes, perhaps, Kano, we're not sure what is likely to happen in these other locations. Now, the Nigerian predilection for certain kinds of analysis, if things were to get out of hand in these flashpoints, persons are likely to say, going forward, in spite of the peace accord, see what happened in the following locations. So since we still have some lead time, what would be your suggestion with regard to these identified or identifiable areas of potential mayhem in the course of the elections? Why the national players are indeed going ahead with the terms and spirit of the National Peace Accord?
Yeah, I think I want to re-echo the critical role of state institutions in the electoral process. Both the security actors, I'm talking of the military, the police, the state services, INEC, NOA, Institute for Peace and Conflict Resolution, and other state institutions, including even the NTA, the media component of it. They owe the state, the country, the citizens, the responsibility, to ensure neutrality and impartiality in the entire political process. And I think that is their constitutional role. So the key thing now is how do they unpack their role, at the federal level and at the state level. And I think that is why this is very, very important. I know and I'm aware that the security actors, for example, have been trained over and over again. And I know that I'm aware that the National Security Advisor on two very key occasions have cautioned and warned security actors to be neutral and to be impartial in this process. Taking this forward to the state level, particularly at the flashpoints, states that are likely flashpoints, for violence and all that, I think that the committee obviously has to do some certain work. It has to expound in terms of including some other actors that will take some of these roles to the states. Because we know that there is governance deficit in most of the states. Let's be very frank with ourselves. Because our politics is just center high. Everybody's looking at the federal. But at the state level, there is serious governance deficiency, in terms of democracy and how that runs. And we all know that most of our state governors are emperors. Let's be very frank with ourselves. And I think that the state level is a weak, is a serious weakness in our democratic chain. And that is why a lot of work really needs to be done at the state level. So I will want to challenge the committee to meet with other stakeholders, both state and non-state stakeholders, to reach out to the states Because even in the States, it's individual actors, political actors that are fanning these embers. Let there be competitions of ideas between these groups at the state level.
Okay, Ochogu, thanks a lot. But just Bishop Kuka in Sokoto, I know you can see your terms of reference get to be expanded with each comment by our guests in the studios, and I believe other Nigerians. What do you think can be done? Because there's a tinderbox in Rivers. There's another one now in Akwa Ibom. Right? Kano is there. Kaduna is also there. Might the National Peace Committee be so minded as to even take what will be tentative steps towards reaching out to this, so that whatever occurs in those locations do not then detract from the greater quality of what you have done at the national level?
You know, Kingsley, the problem is that the average Nigerian citizen likes to outsource his responsibility or her responsibility, either to God or to other institutions. The Peace Committee doesn't have even no matter, I mean, it doesn't have the resources, doesn't have the manpower, it cannot replace the police, it cannot replace INEC. We are only a moral force. And I think we have to, in our own wisdom, choose the battles we believe we have a fair chance of winning. And the real issue is collaboration and cooperation. But I think Professor Choko has spoken to the point. We cannot underestimate how disconnected ordinary people are from government. And I just, anecdotally, it was said that there was this dancing troupe in a village in Plateau. And they were brought from their village. Whenever a president visits, they always bring them because they are very good dancers. And once they were brought, so when they were brought, I think it was Shagari who was in power or so. So the last time they danced, so a new president came and they were brought. And when they started singing, they said, "Oh, we know Shagari, you're welcome." And unknown to them, it was Babangida who was in power. So somebody whispered to the lead singer, "No, Shagari is no longer in power. He's no longer in power." It is. So the woman stopped and said, "Have you told us?" You know, so there is such total disconnection. The politicians come to all the villages, and after that, nobody hears about them again. So the question is, it's not so much that, elections are coming. The people who will cause the problems are the politicians who are ready to cover up the tracks of their disconnection with their people. Communities that they have hurt, communities they've done nothing for. Now that their arrogance is almost coming to an end, they want to make sure that they do everything to retain power. So for me, these are the critical issues. But the final point is that the security agencies, we can go on and on. But there is something that is fundamentally wrong with the way people are appointed in Nigeria. In South Africa, you don't appoint a police commissioner without the contribution of ordinary people. So when you have a situation where people feel that their jobs are tied to the survival of that regime, they will do everything to be on neutral. They can pretend to be neutral, but they know that if the president loses, they lose their job. If the governor loses, they lose their job. So I think we may need to think a little bit more creatively about how do you secure this job? Because without job security, a man who is holding a position knowing that its longevity depends on the survival of the one who appointed him, they will do everything because the president staying in power, the governor staying in power is an extension of them staying in power. So we will do the best we can, but as I said, we are not going to replace the security agencies. We won't replace INEC, and I take the point that Mike made, which is a very good point. But the problem is if you create all these institutions, nobody will come for any activity in Abuja or elsewhere without being paid. This is how ordinary people feel. They feel that the guys who are at the top there are chopping. Now baboon will chop. Unless baboon stops chopping, monkey is not going to work. So our people have become very wise. The members of the Peace Committee are doing the job voluntarily. But I cannot pretend that I'm doing it voluntarily because in Sokoto, somebody is paying for my food. Somebody is paying for my transportation. But I cannot expect somebody to leave Akwa Ibom and come to Abuja simply because he or she loves Nigeria. I'll be asking too much.
Very much, Bishop Kuka. If we allow you, you continue. Very strong points you're making there. Thank you. We do appreciate your contribution. That's Bishop Hassan Matthew Kuka from Sokoto Network Center, also Secretary of the National Peace Committee. Thank you very much. And also,
I'm sorry, Ruth. He's a member of the National Peace Committee. this center hosts the secretariat of that. Bishop Kuka from our Sokoto Network Center, thank you very much. And by the way, former President Shehu Shagare is very close to you there in Sokoto. So...
All right, we'd also like to thank our guest from our Lagos Network Center, Mr. Philip Kachiku, national leader, the Change We Believe movement. Thank you so much. Thank you. And also in our studios here, we'd like to thank Dr. Yunusa Tanko, National Conscience Party NCP presidential candidate and former IPAC chairman. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much for having me.
He's also a member of the National Peace Committee, and Mr. Mike Utsaha, legal practitioner and public affairs analyst. Thank you very much for your contributions.
Welcome, my great pleasure.
All right, Ochogo, you've been signed off, I believe. Thank you for being with us. Joseph Ochogo, Senior Research Fellow, Institute of Peace and Conflict Resolution.
Thank you.
Gentlemen, thanks a lot for being with us. Unfortunately, this is the way it goes today. We hope that things will go well. We are unable to take our weather forecast for the rest of the day. But thank you for being with us on Good Morning Nigeria today. We are back same time, 7 o'clock in the morning, and that will be on Monday. Until then, do have a nice day and enjoy your weekend. I'm Kingsley Osadolo.
And I'm Ruth Aguwele. Thank you very much and enjoy the rest of your weekend. Bye-bye.
Like say they want to tell us